Good morning, social media world. Dave Huber here for Tradeway, and it is time for Word Wednesday. Today's topic, making decisions, learning from Proverbs. There is wisdom in Proverbs. And when it comes time to make decisions, many people feel as though they either lack wisdom or they at least lack an understanding of what decisions they ought to make. There's a lot of indecisiveness with Christians these days because we're not entirely sure which way we're supposed to go. We ask the Lord to lead us, but we're not really sure if he's leading us or not. And so we walk kind of timidly and we make decisions in a very timid fashion, and we don't actually get to a place where decision making is even easy or enjoyable for us. In fact, a lot of times when it comes to making decisions, we get a little bit stressed about it, right? And so if you are the type of person who find yourself being a little indecisive or experiencing a lot of stress because of the decisions that you have to make, then this may be something that can really help you. So you're in the right place at the right time if you are wanting to know more about how to make decisions and to do so with confidence. So let's look at the book of Proverbs. It can teach us a lot about confidence and about making decisions. Proverbs 10:9, he that walketh uprightly walketh surely, but he that perverteth his ways shall be known. Let's talk about what this means. When it's saying he that walketh, it's talking about the person who goes about his daily life making decisions and doing things, right? So if you make decisions and act on those decisions with uprightness, then you walk surely. In other words, you'll be safe, you'll be secure. But someone who perverteth his ways, which means someone who does not make decisions and take action with integrity or uprightness, they'll end up being found out, and they'll find themselves in a situation where it's not going well with them. The ESV translation states it like this: whoever walks in integrity walks securely, but he who makes his ways crooked will be found out. Now, Proverbs 11:3 has another interesting take on integrity. The integrity of the upright shall guide them. See, what's interesting about that is the idea that integrity is what guides them. If you're trying to make decisions, isn't it great if you could have some kind of guide, somebody showing you, make these decisions, not those decisions. Do this, not that. Having someone point in the direction that you're supposed to go, like a roadmap for your life, is really very helpful. We depend on roadmaps all the time when we're driving down the road. All of us have gotten very dependent on Siri and Google Maps and having something point us in the right direction. What if we had a guide in all the decisions we have to make? Proverbs says that our guide should be integrity. Okay, well, so how does integrity really guide us? What is integrity? Well, we tend to think of integrity as being good, but it's not just that. See, integrity means to be honest and have strong moral character. And we tell ourselves, well, I'm a good person, so we think we check the box. But what we really mean is I'm a well-intentioned person. I'm someone who intends good. And I have an intention to do something good, but then I don't always follow through. How many of us, when it comes time to make a decision, we try to make it, and then we find ourselves backtracking, or maybe life gets in the way, something slaps us upside the face, and we get surprised by something, and all of a sudden we have to back out of a decision we've made, or we find ourselves going, well, I can't follow through. And we find it very difficult to follow through with decisions that we've made. Sometimes that happens. I guess a very common area of life when that happens is getting in physical shape, right? Like making healthier decisions. We go, okay, I'm going to eat healthy today. But then the tyranny of the urgent comes, and all of a sudden we got to be somewhere fast. And so we go, I want to eat healthy, but I'm just going to have to go and do the fast food real quick because it's necessary, right? And what we find ourselves doing is life causes these situations to occur, and we start making excuses as to why we can't follow through with the decisions that we make. We don't realize just how damaging that is to us, because what we're doing is we're lacking integrity in our own lives. And so instead of having a guide, we have trouble. We find ourselves like really in a lot of indecisiveness, or when it comes time to make a decision, we'll say, I'm going to start this diet, and then we stop it, and then we start it, and we stop it, we start it, we stop it. And eventually we find ourselves getting to the place of not doing what we know we should do. And James 4:17 says, if anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, to him it is sin. So what we're finding ourselves in is we are well-intentioned people. We mean well. We go, okay, I'm going to make a decision. And then when we make the decision, things get hard. Distraction follows our intention. And we go, I'm going to have to make this decision later. I'm going to have to start again some other time. And we put off the follow through. And by putting off the follow through, what we do to ourselves is we show ourselves that we lack integrity. We're not being honest with ourselves, because we told ourselves we're going to do this. We're going to make a change in our financial lives. We're going to make a change in our physical lives and our eating habits, or in our sleeping habits, or we're actually going to go and have that difficult conversation with someone that needs to be had. And then we don't do it because something pops up and now there's a distraction. And so we begin to lack integrity in our own lives because of life getting in the way. Well, I want you to think about this for a second. Societies of honor versus societies of dishonor. Let me give you an example of a society of honor. In a society of honor, when someone says they're going to do something, they just do it. And the reason why they just do it is that there is a cultural norm that if you don't keep your word, then you have just committed a terrible injustice. Like the law is going to come after you if you don't keep your word. And there are some countries that are set up that way, where if you tell someone you're going to do something and you don't do it, there are serious consequences. But then there are societies of dishonor, where you could tell someone you're going to do something and then you don't do it, and there's really very little repercussions, especially just in the way the society is set up as a whole. The socioeconomic cultural norms, they don't really punish you for not keeping your word to someone. So knowing this, just think to yourself, what kind of society am I living in? Now, I can tell you this, in America, we have changed from a certain type of society to another certain type of society. So just think for a second, what type of society is America right now? And if you're thinking that America is kind of a society of dishonor, you're probably right, because you can get away with telling somebody something and doing something else, or giving someone your word and not following through. You go, well, can I really get away with it? Well, there's not really major social norms that would just punish you big time for that. There's a little bit, especially depending on what crowds you run in, right? What kind of people you run with, who are your friends and who are your family. And if it's within your group of people just generally not accepted, this idea of lying, then okay, great. Then maybe there's a little bit more honor in your group. But society as a whole has kind of become this society of dishonor. Want me to prove it? How do most business agreements start? They start with a contract. And a contract is an agreement between two individuals based on a mutual distrust. So in other words, we make an agreement. We say, all right, here's my part of the deal and here's your part of the deal. And we're going to write up a contract, because if you break your part of the deal, I want to have it in writing that you made this deal with me. And if I break my part of the deal, you're going to want to have it in writing as well. And so we have, it's a very loud motorcycle that just went by. We have the society of dishonor where contracts kind of rule our business dealings, right? So we have contracts based on mutual distrust. But it wasn't always that way. Here in America, we didn't used to use contracts. We used to use something called a handshake. And that handshake was symbolic of a covenant. We wouldn't have contracts, we had covenants because we used to be a society of honor instead of a society of dishonor. You go, well, Dave, what does this really have to do with my decision making? Watch, you'll see in just a second. And so because of the society that we live in, the world system in this society of dishonor is showing you that it's pretty normal to say something and do something else. It's pretty normal to tell a lie, especially if it's like for good intentions, right? Oh, I'm not going to tell the truth because it's going to hurt somebody's feelings. And we have sacrificed integrity on the altar of kindness. And what's funny about that is that God tells us to be both kind and people of integrity. And so we're not supposed to sacrifice one for the other. And so sometimes we sacrifice integrity on the altar of kindness. Sometimes we sacrifice integrity on the altar of the tyranny of the urgent, right? Like, so there's urgent matters to attend to. And because of that, I have a good reason. Everyone would understand if I don't keep my word in this particular situation. So I'm just gonna pretend like I didn't say it, or I'm gonna say, well, I'm gonna do it later, right? And I'm gonna postpone following through with what I said I would do. And so because of the way society is set up, we're in an environment where keeping our word is not very much encouraged. But it used to be that in America, we would say things like, my word is my bond. And we would shake hands on it. We'd say, all right, well, if I shook somebody's hand, that was as good as having a contract, is what we would call it now. That we would say it's as good as a contract, but we'd be wrong to say that because it's not as good as a contract. It's better than a contract. Why do I say this? Well, because it's more of a covenant. And covenants work a little bit differently than contracts. A covenant is an agreement between two individuals based on a mutual trust, not based on a mutual distrust like a contract. Contract, it's like, I don't trust you, you don't trust me, so we have a contract. But a covenant is an agreement between two individuals based on a mutual trust. I trust you, you trust me, we're going to go into business together. And so here's what a covenant looked like in biblical times. And over in the Middle East, sometimes this is still symbolized or done full out. Watch this. So a covenant works like this. You would have, I would have an animal, you would have an animal, and we'd come to each other for a business agreement. And you would take your animal sacrifice, I would take my animal sacrifice, and we'd sacrifice the animal, and we would both cut up the animal. It'd be very grotesque. It'd be really a very graphic picture of brutality. You'd cut up your animal. I'd cut up my animal. I'm not suggesting we should do this, but you'll see the picture of it. This was what they would do in biblical times. You'd cut up your animal. I'd cut up my animal. And then we'd walk in a figure eight around the animals. You'd go around your animal. I'd go around my animal, and we'd meet in the middle. And when we'd meet in the middle, we'd take those same knives and we'd cut our hands, and we would put our hands together, and we'd become blood brothers. This was a covenant. And we'd wrap our hands with rope to show that we were bound together by this covenant. And the reason why we intermingle our blood was that this was a very personal and a very trusting relationship, as strong as if we were family, like blood family, right? And so we would come together in the middle, we'd bind our hands together, and we'd say something like, we'd take on each other's names even. And so we'd say something like, my resources, all my resources are your resources, all your resources are my resources. We are, in a sense, we are one. And what happens is, based on the trust that we have for each other, we are going to make this business agreement, this covenant between us. And then we'd say something like, if I don't keep this covenant with you, may I be like this dead animal right over here. Now think about what that looks like. That picture of brutality, for me to say, if I don't keep my word, may I be like that. That puts a lot of pressure on me. And that's really saying something. Like if I am not going to follow through with what I said I'm going to do, I'm going to end up dead like this animal. And you would say the same thing. And that would be a covenant relationship. That is a whole lot stronger than the picture of, I'm going to sign on the dotted line and you're going to sign on the dotted line. And if you don't do what you say you're going to do, I'm going to take you to court. And if I don't do what I say I'm going to do, you're going to try and take me to court. And I'm going to make sure I have better lawyers than you. And we're going to fight it out. And I'm going to try and wiggle out of what I said I'd do. So you see how covenant is so much stronger than contract. And so we need to learn to be the type of people who will live by covenants. Because when we do that, what are we actually being? We're being people of uprightness, people of integrity. And so what happens is when we try to make decisions they become more and more difficult to make because we have lacked integrity in the decisions we've already made in our past. What happens is we begin to not believe the words that are coming out of our own mouths because we let the society of dishonor tell us it's okay not to keep our word. And if we don't keep our word, well, then it'll work out okay. There's not going to be much punishment. What we've failed to recognize is that we suffer a devastating blow to our psychology of making decisions. Because when we make a decision and we don't follow through, did we really even ever make a decision? And then we find ourselves having a very difficult time making decisions in the future because we didn't really make decisions in the past. And so it's very, very important that we don't allow the society of dishonor to tell us it's okay not to keep our word. We need to practice keeping our word to other people, regardless of the cost. We need to make personal sacrifices. I'm not going to be able to go do this thing that came up because I already committed to that thing for that person, and I'm going to keep my word to that person. Or I'm not going to be able to eat at all for lunch today because my only choices are these fast food choices. I don't have time to go and get some healthy food. I better make more time for food later. I'm just going to have to skip a meal so that I can keep my integrity to myself. And so we start taking our decision making and we add integrity to it. And when we add integrity to it, it will begin to guide us in our decision making. Because when we make a decision, we'll start to realize, oh, if I'm going to decide this, I'm going to have to follow through with this. And I'm going to have to give up that. See, the word decide has the word scission in it, right? Like it's a compound word. We're going to depart through cutting. That's what deciding is. We're going to depart these two different outcomes. So in order to have the outcome we desire, we have to depart from the outcomes we don't desire, which means in order to get to this, we're going to have to decide to cut off that. That requires sacrifice, but that's how we get to a place of an integrity. So if you have a hard time making decisions in your life, maybe it's a hard time making a decision to actually follow through with a diet. Maybe it's a hard time making a decision to make a hard financial change, right? Like maybe you're going to try and pay off some debt, but Christmas is coming right around the corner and you want to be able to give presents to everyone. So I'm going to make that personal sacrifice of keeping my word, and I'm not going to try to get out of debt, and I'm going to go and blow a bunch of money. You see what we do? We justify. It's logical justification. And so instead of allowing ourselves to do that, we have to make the truly hard decision to cut ourselves off of other sometimes desirable outcomes. Like I want to be able to go and give amazing presents to all my friends and family members, but I just don't have the time to do it. I don't have the money to do it. So maybe what I need to do is give them a heartfelt homemade present and let them know I'm working to get out of debt. And when I get out of debt, I hope to buy better presents in the future. It's not going to be an easy thing to do, right? It's going to hurt a little bit. But by keeping our word to ourselves, we have something that we never really truly understood that we were lacking. And that's the thing, is that when we make hard decisions, what makes them hard is we don't have this immediate gratification. It becomes hard to make the decision because it's just not going to be fun in the moment. It's not going to feel good in the moment. Well, you can flip that, because guess what you have when you make that hard decision and you follow through that with that hard decision? You have integrity. You can look yourself in the mirror, and even though that was hard and it wasn't fun to be able to skip lunch because you couldn't make the eating decision that you wanted to make, and you go, I'm just gonna have to skip and keep my word to myself. You can look yourself in the mirror and you can say, guess what? I might have missed a meal, or I might have had to get lower dollar presents for somebody, or I might have had to suffer through a very difficult conversation that made me feel bad with that relationship I'm trying to repair. Or maybe I had to stop having so much fun with my money and start putting my money to work to make a financial change for my future. Like, you can look yourself in the mirror and go, it wasn't fun, but I have in this moment integrity. You've got something immediately. That there is an immediate change that happens in your mind and in your heart when you begin to keep your word to yourself. And guys, at first it might not seem like much, but you string enough of those together and you begin to believe the words that come out of your mouth, all of a sudden you will have confidence when making decisions, because you'll know, when I make this decision, I'm going to follow through. I hope you've enjoyed Word Wednesday. This is something that has drastically changed my life. When I get to the point where I have integrity, once I got to that point, when I had integrity in the decisions I made, I started having massive breakthrough in my life. Decision-making stopped being so hard. I became a more decisive person. But why is that? Because the book of Proverbs, throughout almost every chapter, you'll see something in there about having integrity. And that's something that most Christians lack in a big way today. Partly because of society. Society has made it easy and acceptable and accessible to sin. And what is the sin that so many of us are guilty of? Not doing the good that we know we ought to do, just like James 4 told us. So, guys, I want to be an encouragement to you. I hope that you'll share this with people that you know and love, and let's all work together to become people of integrity. Keep the word to ourselves that we say that we're going to keep, and when we do that, we will begin to have confidence in the decisions that we have to make. Thank you for being a part of Word Wednesday. We'll see you next Word Wednesday. Same time, same channel, 11:30 a.m. on Wednesdays. Also, don't forget, we have prayer meetings on Tuesday afternoons at 1 p.m. Those are usually led by my good friend, Blair Nightingale. He will be praying with you. Maybe your prayer is, Father, help me to reflect on the decisions I've been making. Help me to recognize when I am not having integrity in those decisions. Help me to repent of that lack of integrity, and help me to reform the decisions so that I can begin to follow through in the decisions that I make. Help me to have integrity in my life. I'll see you at Word Wednesday next Wednesday. I'll see you in the prayer meeting. Look for the links in the chat or in the comments section. I'll have the team put them in there for you. And then I'll see you in the market. Y'all take care and have a fantastic afternoon.